So if you want to save America from crooked Joe Biden, you must go caucus tomorrow. The first step. The first step. We got to do it. We got to do it big. You got to get out. You can't sit home. If you're sick as a dog, you say, darling, I got to make it. Even if you vote and then pass away, it's worth it. If you're sick, if you're just so sick you can't, darling, I don't think. Get up. Get up. You get up. You vote. Yes, darling. Ultimately, we know who calls the shots, right? The shots, right? The shots, right?
So this is day after, the big Iowa caucus, right? So Trump wins Iowa, and the question on every non-Trump fan's mind is, why can't Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis beat this man, right? And I say non-Trump fan because I feel like if you're a Trump fan, you know darn well why these two people cannot beat your candidate. It's definitely the question that from the outside, and but it's not a question from the inside. And you got anything to add to that, Jamie?
I mean, it's a cult of personality, and DeSantis is not a charismatic leader, and neither is Nikki Haley.
And they're not one option, sure. I mean, I say that's one take.
Isn't that it though?
No, not everyone agrees. Although,
who cares if they agree? Who cares who agrees?
It's not. So anyway, I mean, look, it's the question, okay, right? It's not. It's he trounces them in Iowa. And it's a question I have. It's a question that most people have. All right. So from Democracy Now!, despite Trump's triumph in Iowa, many GOP voters say legal troubles could make him unfit for office. Okay. So that's I guess that's the Hail Mary now. It's like the man did really well here. And the Hail Mary, which I talked about that like what, 2 episodes ago or an episode ago, is that I guess he has to go to jail. If you're not a fan of the man, he needs to go to jail. Otherwise, he's going to be lording over you for the next 4 years. Anyway, from Democracy Now!
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We end today's show with the first caucus of the 2024 election cycle. Donald Trump has trounced his opponents in the Iowa caucus, winning by a landslide, record 51% of the record low vote. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis narrowly topped former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, 21% to 19%. Vivek Ramaswamy suspended his campaign, endorsed Trump.
Like we knew that wasn't going to happen, right? Like that like Vivek dropping out after he kind of just made his little inroads, then deciding that, hey, I'm behind you. You're my boy, Blue.
I wasn't sure if Vivek was going to drop out. I knew he was going to do poorly, but I didn't know that he would necessarily drop out. I didn't know what his personality was.
I feel like, the man is a grift, right? And he's learning from his mentor. Okay. He's like, I need to get famous enough that people will continue to talk about me, and I could possibly get a position in this man's cabinet, because that's, that this man most likely, unless sent to jail, will win the presidency. And I want him to know I'm behind him. And I was only here as a placeholder because he decided not to join the debates. But I was always 100% a Trump fan. I just was only running.
It was like Trump's avatar on the debate stage.
Essentially. Yeah, more or less. Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. So anyway, and the record low turnout is wild because, I sent you a photo of a person with a Trump sign holding a baby in the frigid colds of Iowa this past week. And going out to do God knows what for his campaigns. I mean, like you said, cult of personality. You're going to do what you need to do to get your guy in office. I just
think you have an infant or not.
Whether you have an infant or not. I do want to point out before we continue, because they may say it a little later in the video, but one of the things is, the Iowa caucus, I think at max not last go around, but I think the highest turnout was 100 and it's either 108 or 180. I mean, I guess those numbers are a little big, but considering how many people possibly live in the state, you're only dealing with well under 200,000 people actually participating in this caucus, which is kind of,
and
wild.
It's significantly less than last time from what I saw. Like
and it's significantly less because of the weather here. So it's like, you could beat on it was a landslide, but it's sort of like, but like only half the team really showed up, right? So it's like you trounced, you trounced for the people that showed up. The cult showed up for you.
Yeah, that's
which still says a lot, right? It says a lot that you could galvanize people to risk like life and limb to come out.
You could exploit mentally ill people to risk their lives and the lives of their infants. Yeah.
Hey, those are your words, not mine. All I'm going on is the facts of what I like, the things that are on the face, and the media keeps going on about like, oh my God, what a slacking. But I mean, it's literally like a fifth of the entire Republican base in Iowa that actually turned out to vote in this thing because you had to go in person.
Can I ask like a silly question here? Why is Iowa so important? Do you know? Can you explain that at all?
I have a video that I could play after this one, and that might explain that. I mean, but if we don't get to that,
I'm not a party dude. I don't really understand all the primary workings. But why does Iowa?
It's a question.
Why is so much weight on there that dictates what everyone else has to swallow?
Look, if we get to the video in this episode, we might get into another video. But in that video, even the ABC, it's like either ABC News or whatever, they're CBS News, I think. But they're asking Iowans why Iowa? Why should it start here? Why should this be so important? And they literally say the people they've got are like, well, we're the middle of the country. We are speaking to the Rust Belt. We're as like Rust Belty America as you could get, and so why not? There is no actual reason to say that it needs to be here. They're just literally the answer is.
If anything, you would want to alternate. Like
you would if you don't live in Iowa.
Every election cycle, you go somewhere else.
If I don't live in Iowa, of course I would want that. But if you live in Iowa, why would you want the Iowa?
But then I don't. So I still don't understand because is the logic that whoever goes first? So you did alternate every election cycle, and whoever goes first, they're setting such a precedent that it scares the next group to go that they wouldn't want to go against them. Like, why does it matter?
Here's what I'm going to tell you right now. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. From 2000, this is a fact that I had to dig up because actually I had this kind of question, and here's the facts on it. From 2000 to now, the Iowa caucus has only the winner, whoever won it, has only gone on to be the party's nominee twice. That was George W. Bush, not senior, in 2000, and Donald Trump in 2020. So going
like a media thing, it's just
exactly. I'm saying going on facts. Yeah, if you were to look at the facts, this is the fact, the winner of this caucus has only gone on to be their party's nominee in terms of the Republican Party twice in 20 years.
Yeah, so I don't even understand why we care.
So I'm just saying, why would you fight for it? That's the other thing. As a normal person, you're like, well, why do these guys get to do it all the time? But if you know this fact and you're like a state legislator or whatever, why would you fight to be first, knowing that you've only done it right 2 times in 2 decades?
It's not, but I mean, it's an interesting way of phrasing it. Doing it right.
Well, or picking,
my philosophy,
the right horse, whatever.
Yeah, but that's not what you should be doing. You should be picking the people you think are best, not who you think is going to win. It's just like my own personal philosophy, right? But I know that's not part of the 2-party competitive.
I'm just saying, to be fair, the fact that they've been wrong in terms of who actually goes on so many times means that they are legitimately just picking the person that they think is the person that speaks the most for them, and
person that they think represents them best. And what the data is telling us is that you are not
the rest of the country,
the larger country.
Yeah, that's right. So your Rust Belt mentality of, well, where are the every America actually is saying, no, actually you're a minority of America.
So wait, then with the other two, who were the other two?
I said there's only 2. What do you mean?
No, the other 2. The 2 times they were right. Where is that any of it Trump? The other
I said there's Trump in 2020. He was Iowa's pick, and Bush in 2000.
Oh, okay. All right. So it is like the last 2 times kind of ish. No, not McCain.
No.
But it was Trump. It was Trump. And what I was saying was, wait, they picked Trump, but you're saying
not in 2016.
Oh, so there's a chance that, I mean, it's a weird.
They didn't pick him in 2016. They picked I forget who he was running against for the Republican nomination in 2016, but yeah, they picked the other guy. They only picked Trump once. And now. So they
Hillary.
They picked
Hillary. He ran against Hillary.
No, for the party. Party.
Oh.
You're right. Don't think Democrat, Republican. Think within the Republican Party to be the nominee to go up for the presidency. In 2020, they picked him, but that was after he had already run, and then he lost.
It was Ted Cruz. It was Marco
right. Yeah,
Rubio,
whatever. Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, they picked one of those guys. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah. So it's not even like they've always been diehard Trump supporters.
So it's more like they choose who won't be president.
That's sort of what I'm getting at. Going first means you're choosing most likely who everyone else is going to ignore. That's what it seems. That's what it feels like. It feels like anything else when you go like in a game or something, like you're doing a reality story, like a challenge or something. You pick the people to go first who you want to lose because they don't know how the game is played. So you watch them falter, you watch them fail at it, and then now you know what not to do. So
do you think the Republicans want that because they don't want Iowa late in the game to actually say who the Republican nominee is going to be? They want to leave that up to someone maybe
someone more important. Someone that is more accountable. That's what I'm saying. Like the fact that they did this means that maybe other Republicans are like, oh, we need to step up now. Like this could actually even be a weird play to say we don't want Trump to be the nominee now that everyone has watched what happened in Iowa despite these freezing temperatures. People are going to get their butts out of the seat and go and vote to make sure it doesn't happen in their state. So this could actually completely backfire. In fact, I mean, there's talk of Nikki Haley doing really well in New Hampshire, which is coming up next. She spent a lot of money there. The New Hampshireites could be like, oh man, we gotta silence these crazy, like the way they're perceiving it. I'm not making a judgment. The way they might be perceiving it is saying, hey, look, these people are going after this guy who might end up in prison. We got to do something about it. And so in New Hampshire, there might be a complete rebuke of what happened in Iowa. That very well could be part of the game. You never know.
What do you mean? You sound like you're trying to be neutral about Trump.
I'm trying to be neutral because there's a bigger problem at play.
Who are you fooling?
Look, I'm far left, right? I'm not a fan of this establishment in many respects. I'm just saying that at where we are right now, the game that's being played, what's happening? It's beyond just saying, hey, don't vote for Trump because, it's like, I mean, what are we going to do? What are we playing at here? I said this last episode. I was like, if your inclination at this point is that I want to support this man and despite like felonies, despite, it being quite obvious to the rest of us that he is a grifter, that he is, it's a play to use the presidency to enrich himself and not necessarily, not at all to do better for the country. I don't know. I mean, like, if you can't see that, and the only alternative to shut that down is to throw him in jail. I mean, like, it just feels like we're not playing.
But if he breaks the law and that's the penalty, that's what it is.
Fine. That's fine. Yeah, that is what it is. You're absolutely right.
You're not imprisoning a political opponent. You're holding accountable a criminal who happens to be running for office.
You're right. No, you're right. I'm just saying that, you're absolutely right. I am not framing it fairly. You're right. You're framing, you're putting someone in prison who has broken the law. You're absolutely right about that. But my point is that's the only, but that is the only way to stop him.
That's funny. The only way to save the country is to hold elite accountable, to hold the wealthy accountable. That's an interesting. It's how interesting how crystallized that issue has been. Because you would say that about anyone who breaks the law, but if if it's not this particular figure, it kind of gets forgotten about. Maybe they do something wonderful and everyone forgets it, but because it's this, it's funny how different it is. There have been plenty of wealthy people in the past who have broken the law, and then we all just collectively brush it under the rug.
Or corporations that harm tons of people.
Exactly.
I mean, look at the guy. Look at the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, like, people are like, oh my god, they had to pay out like $600 million, and you're like, they earn $700 million an hour. You took an hour out of their coffers with this judgment. It's like, do you think this is actually hurting them compared to the people whose lives have been like irreparably damaged? That's it. Yeah, you're right. So no, it's crazy. Right. It's crazy. Yet we still go on, and they still get more contracts from the government, and we still pay them. We still pay the outrageous fees for their drugs, or if it's someone who didn't do well with your data, you're right. Like, it's it does All I'm saying is you're right. Everyone gets away. And in this one instance, letting him get away if he is convicted and letting him off or pardoning him, yeah, that you're right. You're basically selling the soul of your country down. You're selling the soul of your republic down the river, because it's like this is like a watershed moment. You got to hold them accountable in order to maintain the integrity of your government, whatever is left of it, right at this point. So, Democracy Now, take it away.
Trump's victory came despite his mounting legal troubles and the fact that he's refused to debate his challengers. He's coming from Iowa to New York to the Manhattan Federal Court today for the second trial determining damages for sexually assaulting writer E. Jean Carroll before he joins other candidates in New Hampshire. For more, we go to Wisconsin, to John Nichols, the nation's national affairs correspondent. He's been covering the Iowa caucus. What stood out for you most? A lot of records here. Record trouncing, 51 to 30% higher than the next candidate, right? DeSantis. Freezing cold weather, and now he's in court in New York.
Now, before I answer here, what's wild about the Iowa caucus is that because he had such fervent support in that state, and the way that the caucus is done, which we could get into that because people are not aware of, but you basically have people stand up talking to their neighbors to say, hey, this guy's a good guy, and ignore what the media is saying. I'm telling you, you live with me. You know me, Joe. I run the General Mills store in town. And, it's like, or I'm the doctor that birthed your kids. I am voting for Trump because he is I know him to be a stand-up guy. It's that kind of testimony that occurs in these caucuses. So it's like, of course, he's in New York and knows that he doesn't have to show up to win something. And there's only 100,000 people that are going to vote in this. And a good chunk of them are giving these testimonies as to how amazing this man is. I mean, the play is to just move on. I mean, why would you hang out? The faithful is already going to do your job for you. What more can be done by you, sticking around? Now, here the other funny thing is, I know before you say this, but there's the other thing you need to know. Factually, there's another article maybe we can link to it in the sources. DeSantis visited all 99 counties in Iowa and still came in second. So that man actually spent the time on the ground. Tried to shake hands, meet eye to eye, and got trounced with the people who ended up showing up.
Because he's unlikable in every way. DeSantis is he's bad at what he does, and he's unlikable, and he has no clout, whether true or myth, to go off of it. Whereas Trump invented this persona over decades and had a boatload of money to manufacture it. DeSantis doesn't have that. He's like the poor man's Trump, and he's bad at it. But yeah, Trump doesn't have to do anything because it's a cult. He doesn't have to do anything. His people, his cultists do it for him. It's like you use the example with fictitious Joe. Joe, I know what the media is saying. Ignore them. And then also buy some of my colloidal silver because it heals everything. If anyone has watched Mother God.
Mother God. Good reference.
Because it's absurd. If you watch one of those cult documentaries, the things they say with such conviction, I said this before, is chilling. And when you apply that to MAGA, the cult of MAGA, the cult of Trump, the things they say about him in the face of all contradicting evidence is chilling. I don't even know how else to put it. The most absurd things that prop him up, that idolize him, that mythologize him, that explain away, if outright calling them lies, any evidence that surfaces, as if he's impermeable to fault. He cannot be wrong in any situation. That absolutism just blows my mind. How could you be an adult and believe anyone falls into an absolute category? It's just I don't know. It denies human nature to think about people in that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry, that just bothers me, and this is crazy.
It's quite a stack of records there, Amy. Thanks for having me. Look, what stood out for me as I walked the streets of Dubuque yesterday was that it was unbelievably cold. And I know cold pretty well as an upper Midwesterner. But they were talking in some parts of Iowa about a 30 to 40 below zero wind chill last night when the caucuses began. And I don't doubt that that may have depressed turnout to some extent. But I have to tell you,
Oh my God, 30 below zero.
Yeah, freezing.
What is that Celsius?
Negative 34.4.
Fahrenheit to Celsius? That's the Celsius, that's negative 34?
That's what it's telling me. That's what Google tells me.
All right. Just say that's cold, people. Jesus, 30
that's
below.
Really cold. And that's also because it's wind chill, that means it's windy.
Yeah.
That'll go right through you.
Oh
That's terrible.
I mean, that's stuff that can kill you.
A reminder, Trump told people to go out anyway, and if you die, it's worth it. Like, you can't say that to these people.
Wow.
Also, there's something
that's shocking.
There's something surreal about this guy in New York now, like going to court for gross conduct or misconduct and campaigning. Like, this is just the pill that everyone swallows.
Not everyone.
No, because other people, you would say you can't possibly focus. You should resign, step down while you take care of your legal stuff. That's a thing that most people call for when someone has this kind of legitimate legal problem. And no, not for him.
Hey, Nixon was never convicted of a crime. It was a whiff of impropriety. It was the notion that he was involved in something, that was unbecoming of the station of the office. That's all that did him in. That's when the party was like, you got to step down. And it wasn't even everybody at first. It was like a few stalled, standouts, old statesmen within the party that were started making the call that everyone just sort of fell in line, was like, yeah, we can't have this guy running for office.
Howard Dean got excited on stage during a presidential campaign and went, yeah.
Yeehaw.
Had to drop out.
Yeehaw, JB. And get it right.
Was it?
It was yeehaw.
I don't think it was yeehaw.
It was yeehaw.
All right, we agree to disagree. I don't think it was
yeehaw.
It
was very high pitched. Yeehaw! No, yeah, maybe it was like a go. No, because I could be misremembering it with the.
Yeah, I think it's you play the video, but anyway, that was thought to be a sign of instability, of emotional instability, that he could not take the stress of the office. There was analysis done after this. The man dropped out because he showed enthusiasm.
Yeah,
that wasn't that long ago, folks.
No, it wasn't.
Wow.
But I have to tell you, I did not see the sort of enthusiasm that I've seen in the past, and I've covered Iowa caucuses for decades. And so in many ways, it seemed as if the Republicans were kind of going through the motions. They were, putting a period on the end of the sentence. Yes, they endorsed Donald Trump. Yes, some of the more urban and suburban areas leaned more toward Nikki Haley, especially, who was rising, and to some extent to Ron DeSantis. But what stood out most...
This man is saying that these people braved negative 30 whatever below wind chills and extreme cold weather just to put a period at the end to just go through emotion. That's really what he's trying to say here?
Yeah, that seems to be what he's getting paid to say. Yeah.
Yeah, if you take it at face value, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I guess it was a foregone conclusion. But I still feel like you have to take more into account that it was temperature.
No, the fact that he's on here to give his professional analysis and that's his contribution. I'm just like, were you paid to say that? Because it seems weak.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
For me was in some of the entrance polling. They do polls as people go into the caucuses. That, for a variety of reasons, is the best way to survey rather than traditional exit polling. And in that entrance polling, 32% of the people who attended the caucuses said that they believed that if Donald Trump was convicted of one of the 91 counts he faces in trials all over the country this year, if he is convicted, they would see him as unfit for office. That's a striking figure, Amy. It doesn't. It's higher than than what we've seen in some polls. And in a state where you're talking about very conservative people coming to the caucuses, obviously they're engaged Republicans or Republican leaners, to have that high a level, I would suggest to you that when you combine that with some other national polls that point to similar concerns, that these trials of Trump may well turn out to be far more significant than a lot of political pundits assume. I think
I had to play that entirety because that was such a striking moment for me, because I mean, from the opposite side, you like you said, it's not about how it makes him look. It's just like, you do the crime, you do the time. It's just like, it's just black and white. If you've broken the law and you're convicted of breaking the law and the sentencing is of such as whatever it is, you can't run for president because you need to go to jail to basically pay your penance for the crime that you've committed. It's interesting to think of it in that way, where it's like, all right, people might be voting for him and showing a lot of enthusiasm for him as a possible candidate to go up against Joe Biden, but that's only because they're waiting. But all that will go away the moment he is actually convicted of a crime. I just think that, it's a different way of looking at it. It's basically you're resulting in the same thing, right? Because it doesn't matter if he's convicted of a crime, he's going to be more likely ineligible to actually run for office, depending on what the crime is. But
what kind of moral compass do these people have? So you're actually thinking that he could have committed the crime, and if you even think he has that in him, or that he may have been associated with it, even in a way that maybe can't be proven, you would still put him in office?
Now, the funny thing about that is, while I disagree with it, I still could see how someone would just simply say, well, let it play out, like that let justice be justice. It's especially, here's the thing, I think
to say I'm waiting for new evidence to come to light. So far, I'm not
evidence,
but to say let's see if he gets convicted.
Well, they're saying, here's the thing. When I heard it, I had to reframe my mind and say that if I'm a super patriot, if I believe this country could do no wrong, and this country is basically like perilously heading down a path of like no recovery.
That's not true, though.
I know it's wrong.
But do no wrong. That's only for them.
That's what I'm saying. I'm getting their
helping any of the others. Others are the wrong part.
Well, I'm getting in their headspace of being a super conservative who is falling in line with Trump. I think at that point you would say, well, the country would convict a man who has broken the law because the country is almost infallible, right? And so they have to get it right. And if they don't get it right, then then it's like, what? Ignore the media, ignore the way that all this may look, right? The hint of impropriety, ignore all that, because that's just media bullcrap. I want the letter of the law. It's like, if no one can convict him of a crime, then I'm going to put him back in office. I mean, it's very simplistic in a way. And I'm just saying that it was a different way of thinking about it. I'm not saying it's right by any means. I'm just saying that it's interesting. I just found it interesting.
Naive and childish.
Sure. Well,
because it's like, I mean, this is the problem with not expediting the court cases, because to be fair, you're innocent until proven guilty. Now, your vote, though, isn't necessarily hinged upon that, like you're saying. But if it depends on like your calculus. If you're like, he could be guilty, he couldn't, let's see what the courts say, it's definitely probable that he did this, like, I think that you shouldn't vote for him, because that's clearly like he's associated with this in a way where he had something to do with it, and you're just saying maybe he didn't technically break a law, but he was associated and knew what was going on. But if you're saying like it's not, he had nothing to do with this, and I think these are sham allegations, and let's just see, obviously if he gets convicted, he won't be a viable candidate, so I'm not going to burn my vote on someone who's never going to see the light of day. Like, I get that. That's, it's like, and I'm not doing a great articulation of how I'm thinking about this, but I just think that there's like a moral hazard there, and either you are ignoring all of the mounting evidence, not even from the things he's been brought up on charges, but just his conduct in general, or you'll vote for him until he's not a viable candidate. I don't know. But the thing that actually stuck out to me about all of this, that last part that you played, which I didn't think you were allowed to do entry polling. I didn't know you could do entry polling. I thought that's why everyone did exit polling. To me, entry polling seems like it runs the risk of intimidation. Like people are going in and you're like, hey, who are you voting for? Like that's weird, right?
I agree with you. Not that it would run the risk. Well, yeah, it could run the risk, but I could see it clearly. It's not illegal here. I mean, you're right.
I thought you weren't allowed to do that, to be honest.
I actually thought that you were not allowed to ask people any questions on the way to the polls. I actually thought that people who were soliciting
was that because this is a primary and not an election? Is that why?
It might actually, yeah, you're actually. I think you probably actually cracked the case here. It's probably because it is a primary, yeah, and it's like inter-party as opposed to like a general election kind of thing. Yeah, you're probably right. That's probably why they're able to do it. Yeah,
I don't like. I mean, even if you are allowed, I find that to be unethical. I don't like that.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting point because it didn't really occur to me that didn't really ping any alarms necessarily when I was listening to it the first run through. But yeah, wow. Okay, that's interesting. I like it. What else you got?
Most of the pundits assume that Republicans are going to line up behind Trump no matter what. That, whatever convictions he faces, whatever happens, they're unconcerned. This entrance polling suggests a very different reality. And if we continue to see this pattern going forward, I think, frankly, it's a compelling number or compelling set of numbers as you look toward November. It may well be that Donald Trump has more of a problem with Republicans than people thought.
I mean, I do feel like it's jumping the gun a little bit because I look, here's the problem. There are definitely so many conspiracies that surround how people view elections now in this country. Even if he was convicted, as long as he's not convicted of a crime that actually removes him from the ballot, it removes him from being eligible for being president, I think it doesn't feel like, especially with the fervor of his fan base, that just because he's convicted of something and then still were able to run, people would not actually vote for him. Not enough. Here's the thing: maybe not enough people to elect him president. The idea that not enough people would vote for him to still make him the party's nominee. I mean, there were people all along who were always saying, Donald Trump might be like a necessary evil. It's like he's draining the swamp. He's like, we're using him to burn the house down. There are definitely people who vote that way. I just feel like there's so many different pockets of the way in which people are using Trump or the way in which they view him that kind of throw everybody in that to say that, hey, we're actually really rational. Like everything about Trump is purely in the realm of rationality. And if this man is seen to, by the law, has been found to have acted inappropriately, we're in unison. All different camps will definitely walk away from this man. That seems a little optimistic to me. That's how I feel about it. And I hear what he's saying. He's saying that I'm wrong. He's saying that if you really are in bed with these Republicans, with these people, they have a moral compass of code that say that even if he is going to do my will, he's going to, it's a bitter pill to swallow. We will walk away and gracefully lose.
I think
right? Isn't that a wild thing?
Mounted an insurrection. Who are these people kidding? Of course they're going to vote for him. I don't think a conviction on moral grounds would dissuade enough people that he won't become the Republican nominee and, run for the presidency. And, if there's enough Republicans to do it, that he could become president. Like, I don't think the conviction is going to do anything because what are you going to do? Let the communists in? Let the socialists in?
That's kind of what I was getting. Exactly.
Like, what are you gonna do? Like,
that's the poison pill.
They have so much time to compartmentalize their dignity, their integrity, and say, yeah, he's horrible, but what am I going to do? Pick a more horrible person?
Exactly.
When in fact, they're not.
That's exactly how. Because and then you have already the people who are saying Biden is a criminal because he hides like the criminality of his son.
The guy mounted an insurrection. No one else has ever done that.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
What? I don't even know what else to say. I don't know how anyone ever got past him mocking a disabled reporter. I don't know how we ever got past that.
I think these. Yeah, I mean, look, between the two of us, I feel like we're raising reasonable points to say why this feels like wishful thinking. It's just based on the evidence that.
Won. So what is this guy saying? If the trend, because they did entry polling, but the dude won. So
because he hasn't been convicted yet. That's so basically he's saying that the convictions have an out, like they're not just about like Democrat, like other people wanting to see justice being done. He's basically saying that we are unified as a country. That if he is
found guilty, hasn't he, of other crimes?
It's like civil stuff, though. It's all civil stuff.
So you say that as if it doesn't matter. The dude is a sexual predator.
Well, well, hey, look, it does matter. It mattered to Colorado and
but but that's why I don't buy it, because he has been convicted and he has settled. He's a fraud. He's a convicted fraudster. He's had to pay out people for his various schemes. And he's a sexual predator, or whatever the term was that he was found for. So like there, I mean, you know, what are you guys talking about? If he's convicted, it's happened. So what? This particular one? Why is which particular one is the one that matters to you? I don't know. I just don't buy it. It's just all ridiculous.
I think it's the one that makes him ineligible to run for office.
But then that's not their choice anyway.
I think that's what's funny. Yeah, that's they're basically saying we're not going to create a civil war over it. We'll let bygones be bygones if he's convicted and cannot actually run for office, right?
Oh my God. Sure.
Well, John, the presidential primaries now shift to New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. What's your expectation in terms of any chances of some of these contenders against Trump to make any headway?
It all comes down to New Hampshire, and there's simply no question of that one. The New Hampshire is the place where Nikki Haley has put all of her energy. I mean, she did go into Iowa, and she's got a lot of money behind her. She's got Koch brothers money, and you know, kind of a lot of the wealthy donor types tend to be very supportive of her, and not giving money directly to her, but doing independent expenditures.
I do think it's really interesting that he is bringing this up, because this is exactly one of the things that a lot of Trump supporters talk about, why they don't trust Nikki Haley and why they won't vote for Nikki Haley. So it is an interesting thing to say that she's going to do well because she's got a lot of corporate dark money funding her, which is the exact thing, right? that people are in this world.
That's what they're all calling out. I mean, that's what
they're calling out.
That's what Vivek called out on the last debate that he was on. That's how he was digging into her, calling her like a corporate stooge, basically.
So you have to have a certain vantage point to think that that's still a positive and will actually help, will be a boon. And
the only reason why that would help is if someone doesn't have the presence of mind to maintain that awareness of that's one of her attributes, or they don't know to begin with, and then they are on the receiving end of the messaging that money is buying, and they're just getting bombarded with Nikki Haley stuff, and they don't know any better. I mean, it's an interesting thing to say. Yes, that's what Trump and Vivek and maybe some diehard MAGA supporters are calling out about her. But the question is, how many people know that about her, and how many people, even if they've heard it, are going to remember it when they get bombarded with the Nikki Haley messaging?
I mean, they're saying that Nikki Haley's strongest supporters, funny enough, are college-educated male Republicans, which are not the majority of Republicans in the country. So it's sort of like,
she's at 19%.
Right. Yeah, which is about the percentage of college-educated male Republicans in the country. Right?
Go back to our Marjorie Taylor Greene episode, folks. That's about it. It's probably around 14 to 19%, depending on when you're living. Yeah. So there you go.
That's what she's polling at. So that all tracks.
Way below the national average, FYI.
So I'm just saying it tracks. So I'm not. By the way, I'm not. I know we're being tongue in cheek about it. I'm trying not to come off of it as like, you know, any kind of. I'm not trying to put what is it called, like a label on it. You know, I'm not trying to weigh it on it one way or another, because, you know, college, you don't need to go to college to be successful in this country. I'm just saying that if you're talking about the demographic that has been polled and seems to support her the strongest, it is also the smallest demographic of the overall party that she is trying to win the nomination of. So, you know, it's like, take that as it is. So it's weird to say she's going to kill it in New Hampshire unless there's a disproportionate like college educated Republican that is not similar, not in step, not in lock with the remainder of the nation. There's just a disproportionate amount of college educated male Republicans in New Hampshire, which like a state that prides itself on how many independents it holds. But I don't want to speak too much on that because actually I think in New Hampshire, independents may be able to vote in a primary. So maybe that's what they're banking on. Who knows?
So she had a campaign in Iowa, but her focus has been primarily in New Hampshire. She's been going into very small towns in that state, really building out a serious campaign. Some recent polling has showed her closing in on Trump. With Chris Christie getting out of the race, a lot of his votes are likely to go to Haley. It's clear from Iowa that Haley does have an appeal in some of the more urban and suburban areas. You've got a lot more suburban areas in New Hampshire. And so that's where it's all at. If Haley beats Trump in New Hampshire, then you've got an ongoing race. I don't think that means that Trump won't be the nominee. I think he's got a tremendous number of advantages in all sorts of states going forward. But New Hampshire.
So I don't think he's not going to be a nominee, but it's going to be really good for ratings, and it's going to be entertaining to talk about right up until he is crowned king of the Republicans. I thought that was really interesting. That it's wild to feel like.
Keep reading my articles, folks.
This is going to be fun. I'm not saying she can beat him, but she'll be able to stay in the race if she wins in New Hampshire. It's a whole lot of nothing.
For more hard-hitting analysis, subscribe to my newsletter.
It's a lot of nothing burgers that's coming up in 2024.
That's all this stuff is. All of this skepticism and analysis is just saying what's obvious and adding in doubt. I should say making conclusive statements and then following them up with doubt. It's just, cool. I mean, way to burn up airtime. I mean, everyone has always thought that these people are vying to be his VP. And who knows if he'll pick them or someone else. But, like, that's what this has always been thought of as it's an interview to be his VP. These are their applications. Yeah. I cannot see anyone beating him. There is nothing about the narrative since he has lost that should make anyone believe that he is not the front runner by far. They just do. And I say they, the different politicians, the pundits, the media organizations, everyone, whether they have moments of clarity where they actually contradict him, they always walk it back or neuter it in some way. It's sickening. He owns the party. He owns them. I don't know why. I guess the votes. I mean, you're probably better apt to answer that. I don't know why, but he does.
I don't know why. That's why we're doing this little exercise. That's why we're going to keep doing it, is to figure out why, because no one seems to really know why.
We'll decide whether this is going to be any kind of realistic contest for that Republican nomination. And if Haley does win New Hampshire, then you do go to South Carolina, her home state. That'll be a big test for her. And, we'll have more to talk about. On the other hand, if Trump does as well or anywhere near as well in New Hampshire as he did in Iowa, this race is going to fade away pretty quickly.
And meanwhile, President Biden has been raising lots of money. In the last quarter of 2023, his campaign raised over $97 million. He's begun now to get on the stump somewhat. Talk about what you see as Biden's chances, especially given his enormous involvement and support of the wars in Ukraine and in the Middle East and in Gaza. I'm sorry, the Israeli attacks on Gaza.
Yes. Look, Biden's got a lot of problems. We're pointing to this exit or entrance poll data out of Iowa that suggests that Trump has problems with his own party. But the fact is that Biden's approval ratings are exceptionally low. And his polls against Trump put him, at best even, sometimes behind, sometimes a little bit ahead. So he's got a hard race ahead of him. And I don't think there's any question. I look at all the polling, and I spent a lot of time talking to people. I recently interviewed Rashida Tlaib about, what's happening in Michigan. Look, there is simply no question. Joe Biden is harmed politically, I think, in a number of states by his ongoing support for the Israeli assault on Gaza. And you look at Michigan as an example. The polls recently out of Michigan have been very, very troubling for Biden. I hear that, in coming days, he's going to try and make some efforts to reach out to Arab Americans, to reach out to communities that have been deeply concerned about this. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think rhetoric's going to help there. I think that only a change in policy is likely to begin to close some of the gap. So Biden's got a hard race ahead of him.
I mean, just to say, there's it's not like Trump's going to change course on that. He's never intimated that he's going to do anything different. So I don't really know why you're not going to vote for Joe Biden based on his conduct with regarding the war on Gaza. I don't like. It's like both parties have the exact same stance with regard to that. So I don't really know why that's a swing point.
There's no comparison there. There's no
contrast, is what you're saying. There's no
contrast.
There.
But with this, this guy just spoke at length, and maybe that at the end was the only thing worth commenting on. But the more I now listen to what this guy is doing, just eating up the airtime, the two quotes I loved, there's sometimes even, sometimes below, sometimes a little bit ahead, which cool. That's all the options at once. And then I liked how he said, and we'll have more to talk about in the future. I just love the promise of competent journalism in the future. It's just, who is John Nichols of the Nation, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, the Nation has. It used to be quite a prominent. Depends on who you talk to. The print is like 7 pages now, but that's neither here nor there. Doesn't necessarily speak to the credibility or the rigor of the analysis that comes out of that publication. I'm not really here about this. It's really just about the fact finding. It's just about the chatting, the talking it out to just say, what's going on. It's weird to just unilaterally just say, hey, look, if Trump is not convicted of a crime, his supporters are going to make him the nominee of the party. And then if he is the nominee of the party, the president is so disliked, he is going to win. I mean, we're in January. It is January. The election is in November. And already the sentiment is like, if this man does not go to prison, he doesn't have to debate. He doesn't have to campaign. He is the next president of the United States. And it's like what are you prepared to do? That was terrible. I was thinking The Untouchables, and I just couldn't get my Sean Connery up to snuff. But it feels like that moment of like, it's just, all right. So at that point, it's just like, all right, if you're in the opposition, it's like, well, what are you prepared to do? Like, what is your options? You have no options at that point.
I just don't.
The Democrats have decided to support a person that is electorally like anemic. And it's like everyone just has to sit and stomach it and watch this go down as if there is no way to reverse course. And that's what I think is so wild. We're watching Democracy Now!, which is like a left-leaning like institute. It's a left-leaning whatever media outlet, and they're just saying, well, stay tuned and watch it all. Watch the ship go down. Watch it.
Yeah, I think that's my gripe with this analysis is that it is baiting for future engagement, and it is not cutting through all of this jargon to just say what's going on. They're quoting polls and giving every possible reason and outcome, but not in a way of what the cause is, but how it could turn out. And yeah, no one cares about that. Like, why aren't they just calling it out and saying why this is what's happening and this is why it is happening? Like, why aren't they talking about this is why he just won there and didn't have to show up?
Well, because nobody knows. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm only.
They're speculating. They're speculating on. Sometimes it's even. Sometimes it's below. Sometimes he's a little bit ahead. We'll have more to talk about in the future, so stay tuned.
Well,
if you're going to speculate, but if you're going to speculate on all of that, then why aren't you speculating on some of the stuff that matters. I mean, you're the one that mentioned education. Why aren't you going into the demographics of these places and really like going into who are these people? Why are they voting for him? What are their issues? Your exit polls are, if he's convicted, will you still vote for him? Yes, because he's been convicted. Like, I don't even know what to tell you. Like, that's such like a BS answer. If your question is, if he's convicted and eligible to run, will you write his name in? I mean, cool, FYI, but doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, why aren't you asking? Like, it's just like, it's not getting to the root of anything. I guess that's my issue. You have ample time to do your job as a journalist, to try and get to the root of these issues, to expose the nerve with all of this time still ahead of us. And instead you're engaging in whatever this is.
Which is just normal, like, you know, it's gamesmanship, it's showmanship. I mean, look, you got to get your viewers in. So, I mean, the thing is, it's annoying, but everyone does it. Every single media outlet does it, especially if you're watching video. You know, print is going to be a little bit more to the point. So I'm not as aggravated by it, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, what you're saying is completely correct. My gripe is that from now till January, the media that is supposed to, like you said, if you're doing some investigation, maybe you are coming up with some answers to say, hey, the median whatever income of the rural towns in Iowa is X, and it's been this way because, I don't know, Amazon shipping has like bought up everything that could compete, and I don't know, corn prices are out of whack, and it's like these people are just angry, and Joe Biden isn't doing anything about it, which means that if you are, this is the analysis I'd expect. It's something to that effect in this, to say Iowa is an absolute crappy place. It's a crap hole.
And Republican Talk Radio has been massaging them for years points, right? Like, whatever it is, yes. Like,
and then Biden, if you want to make any inroads in these people, and here's the other thing, you know, the funny thing about this is, if you speak to most leftists, right, they write off. Here's the thing: you're willing to write off Iowa. You're like, well, obviously their education is an issue, but this is the same state that went for Obama twice.
But it's not just education. I mentioned education because that was something that popped up. But when I covered the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff, it was education. It was the local economy. It was all of the. It was it was the history of political leaders that they had there. Right, yeah. It was the household income. It was the stressors that these people have that are not being relieved by anyone. So they're desperate. And what we know from history is desperate people are easily exploited. And yes, when you think about who is desperate in a society, it tends to be maybe undereducated people who aren't able to capitalize on prosperity, like people who aren't financially stable. Those are just the realities of life. So
yeah, absolutely. But the Marjorie Greene story had so much more roots in like a history of like, you know, slavery and segregation. So it's like it had more components to it, you know, because you're referencing stuff in the 70s that just like continued almost into modern day. But we're talking about a state that is going to go red for Donald Trump that went blue for a black guy named Barack Obama. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's the question that no one wants to really answer. That is, how can you change in such a short period of time? He left office in 2012.
Did Obama fail them? Is it a recoil? Didn't they have a thing like a Reagan Democrat in like Detroit or something? I don't know if I'm getting my politician or parties wrong or geography wrong, but that there's a backfire or a recoiling when, you know, people vote for you and you underdeliver. Yeah. My question to you, if the Democrats, but the Democrats are always the party of the poor, right? I mean, that's like
the working class,
as a working class, but the social programs and stuff, right? They want to support you so you can uplift yourself and blah blah blah. You get on your way. That's always
they haven't been that party since.
That's the messaging. As someone who's not a party dude, that's the perception that I have from the messaging that I heard. And maybe to be fair, like you just said, that messaging is from when I was a younger person. Yeah. But my question, and you've answered this before, as I think just a failing, is who else needs that more than the middle of the country? Why you would think that Democrats would be capitalizing on the middle of the country, on the South and stuff like that, like where you have these extremely rural and poor areas. Like, why? That seems to be it would be a Democrat bread and butter.
Yeah, well, that's one of the main critiques. Yeah, I mean that's a main critique of the party is that the party cultivates. They want to ingratiate themselves to the rich and famous, and that's why they spend so much time in New York, spend so much time in L.A. They're making their own pockets wealthy. That's all the critiques that the other side is saying is that they're all a bunch of sycophants and that they speak out of both sides of their mouths. So they're giving tax breaks to major billionaire corporations while taking food out of the mouths of like women and children, just trying to hold on to the properties that they have. I mean, to be fair, you are actually making a good statement here because you're right. Under Obama, a lot of people lost their houses because of the financial crisis. A lot of basically the fixings of the country went into the banking system and said that basically the banks, if they are doing well and they're prosperous, or they're going to give out loans and help middle America, help Main Street get back on their feet. And that's not what happened. The banks took the money, gave the money to their shareholders, gave the money to their executives, and just basically were like "F you" to the government and everyone else. And we're like, "Thanks for the money. We're back in business. See you all when we see you." And that happened under Obama. So yeah, you're right. I mean, look, there definitely is aspects of that probably shining through, but that doesn't necessarily make you say that just because you're desperate, you're going to now go for a grifter. Like that's what I'm saying. Like there is still a leap.
No, but it's not a grifter. That's the grift is his motive. What they're going for is a populist, and populists exploit desperate people.
Right. Yeah. This is true. You're not wrong. You're not
wrong. What I would sum it up as, though, is look, the level of people who in Iowa said that they would see a convicted Trump as unfit is an encouraging sign for Biden. The reality is that we're likely to have a very, very close November election. And when you get down to it, on both sides, it's going to be an issue of mobilization. And I think Trump will have perhaps some trouble mobilizing the whole of his Republican and conservative base. But Biden also will have trouble in that regard. And so we've got a long, complicated.
I only have to stop it because you've basically been calling this out the whole time. Well, Trump's going to have some issues, but Biden has got issues too. You tune in. Tune in next time.
Let's see what happens, and I'll tell you what happened. Like, cool.
It's very like 1950s cartoon ending.
This dude's manufacturing cliffhangers.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Oh well.
And frankly, pretty frustrating race ahead of us.
And we're going to have to leave it there. And Nikki Haley is pouring money into new ads where she refers to the Trump-Biden nightmare. John Nichols, the nation's national affairs correspondent, speaking to us from Wisconsin, just back from Iowa. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez for another edition of Democracy Now!
So that answered some questions. It did answer others.
Yeah.
The race continues. I mean,
it just shows that we, at least in a segment like that. Now, I've heard some really good analysis that escape me now, because it's like that sort of thing where you hear something really smart and it makes total sense, and then someone asks you to recall it 2 minutes later and you're like, I can't. But I've heard some really good analysis of like why Trump is not who he is, but like why is he in this position that he finds himself in, and how did we get here, and touched on things that you talked about, but like really went into like the interconnectivity and nuance of our country, the like fabric of our society. It was really, really interesting stuff.
I was going to say that you should bring that next time. That we should do that. We'll keep talking about it. The interconnectivity. You're saying there's some really good analysis out there, and that it's not as cookie cutter. Just like, hey, you win some, you lose some type of atmosphere out there. So I mean, like, I hear that's what we're around for. I mean, look, we got the content. We got to keep going. This is the beginning of basically unpacking and running through up until the 2024 freaking election. I can't wait for our debates on debates part 3, part 3. We did it back in the day when Hillary and Trump were going at it. Can't wait to do it, this time around, to see what these two, what I really I think here's the other thing. I think the only thing people, when these two debate each other, I think most people are just going to wonder what kind of wonder drug they've been injected with in order to like look this lively for the debate stage, considering the way that they are in normal day press conferences. So,
do you think they're going to
definitely
debate? I could imagine that they actually won't debate.
I can completely see that. I mean, I like how I'm just turning on a dime. I was like, oh, well, the debates, and I'm like, no, I could see it.
I mean, they may, but I could honestly see where they were just like, they're not going to debate. They'll have their excuses, and we just won't see debates.
Would that be the first time? They'd be interested to know if it's ever happened before in our American
I don't
history.
know. I mean, nothing that I've heard cited before.
Not in the modern era, of course.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to go back pre-Civil War. You're gonna have to go
Something
back,
that's
like,
silly that doesn't matter. But like, I could see that. I could see Trump saying it's rigged, Biden really not pushing the issue because he probably can't make it through.
He can't. Yeah, you can't do it. Yeah.
And them both being totally fine with that.
But the thing is, why would his camp?
And honestly,
why would his camp let him do it though? Because it would just be
does
like
it
the
even
nail in
matter?
the coffin.
Does it
right?
even matter?
You're right. What's the difference? It just
Who is on the fence?
Yeah.
Who is on the fence? Who
So true.
could possibly be swayed at this point?
This is so true. You're right. It would just be for TV.
What else is there? What issue has been hiding under a rock that you've been waiting for, that you didn't even know you needed to hear, that would sway your opinion one way or another? I mean,
it would be interesting if Trump does have a differing opinion on the war in Gaza. That I do think would be that I actually do think could turn some people, definitely.
He'll talk about it in a way that, like, you know,
A populist does, like,
yeah, like
he'll say everything you want to hear. And
exactly, and exactly, it'll be a lot of everything.
both sides. Both sides. You'll hear everything you want.
I can totally see him doing it. You know, it's a terrible thing, but like blah blah blah. Like, you know, I could see him doing that. He's a populist. I mean, it's just is what it is.
Yeah,
he tells you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear, and yeah, that's where we are.
All right. Well, stay tuned for more riveting analysis from the Retraction podcast. JB, where can they find us?
Folks, hit us up on YouTube and Twitter. Listen to us on your favorite podcasting platform. Like, share, subscribe, follow. But most of all, enjoy the show.
And with that, Retraction out.